First contact and tension. The vast expanse of space had always held humanity's fascination, but none could have predicted the day when it would become the stage for our species' greatest challenge. It was on a crisp autumn morning in 2157 when the first alien transmission reached Earth, forever changing the course of human history. Dr. Amelia Chen, lead astrophysicist at the Global Space Initiative, was the first to decrypt the message. Her eyes widened as she scanned the alien text, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard as she worked to understand its implications. "This can't be right," she muttered, double-checking her calculations. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire across the globe. An alien civilization, calling themselves the Zarkonian Empire, had made contact. Their message was clear: Earth was to submit to their rule or face annihilation. World leaders scrambled to respond, their faces grim as they addressed their nations. United Nations Secretary-General Adebayo Okonkwo's words echoed in living rooms and public squares across the planet. "We stand at a crossroads in human history. We will not bow to threats, but neither will we rush headlong into conflict. We must prepare for all possibilities." As panic gripped the populace, the military leaders of Earth's most powerful nations convened in a top-secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. General Sarah Hawthorne, commander of the United Earth Defense Force, paced the room, her weathered face a mask of determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, "we've prepared for this day. Project Thunderchild is no longer a contingency. It's our lifeline." Admiral Ryu Tanaka, head of the Pan-Asian Space Fleet, leaned forward. "The Zarkonians claim to have a fleet of over 500 warships. How can we possibly stand against such numbers?" A thin smile crossed General Hawthorne's face. "With ingenuity, Admiral. With the best of human innovation and spirit." She activated a holographic display, revealing sleek, imposing vessels unlike anything seen before. "I present to you the culmination of 2 decades of secret development, the Terran Supercarriers." Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the assembled leaders took in the sight of humanity's trump card. The Supercarriers were massive, easily dwarfing any spacecraft previously constructed by human hands. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, a product of advanced metamaterials designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons. "These aren't just ships," Hawthorne continued, her pride evident. "They're mobile fortresses, each capable of launching hundreds of fighters and housing thousands of crew members. But their true power lies in their adaptability." She zoomed in on one of the carriers, highlighting its modular design. Each section can be reconfigured on the fly, allowing us to adapt to any tactical situation. Energy shields, rail guns, missile arrays, all can be swapped out or reinforced as needed. Colonel Dmitry Volkov, representing the Eurasian Coalition, whistled low. "Impressive, but can they match alien technology?" "That's where you come in, Colonel," Hawthorne replied. "We need every nation's best and brightest to crew these vessels. This is humanity's stand, and we'll face it united or not at all." As the military leaders debated strategy, Dr. Chen was summoned to the facility. She arrived, breathless, clutching the datapad. "General, I've decrypted more of the Zarkonian transmission. They're not just making demands, they're already on their way. We have less than 6 months before their fleet reaches our solar system." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. 6 months to prepare for a war unlike any humanity had ever faced. 6 months to train crews, to manufacture weapons, to unite a planet that had known centuries of division. General Hawthorne's voice cut through the tension. "Then we have no time to waste. Admiral Tanaka, begin crew selection immediately. Colonel Volkov, I want weapons production ramped up to maximum capacity. Dr. Chen, I need you to head up our alien tech analysis team. If we can glean any advantages from their transmission, we need to know." As the leaders dispersed, each burdened with the weight of humanity's future, Hawthorne remained, staring at the holographic supercarriers. These marvels of human engineering represented hope, but would they be enough? Outside the facility, the world continued to churn with fear and speculation. News networks ran constant coverage of the alien threat, while governments worked to maintain order. In shipyards hidden beneath the seas and in secret orbital facilities, construction of the supercarriers continued at a feverish pace. Across the globe, a sense of unity began to emerge. Old rivalries were set aside as nations pooled their resources and expertise. The best pilots, engineers, and scientists were recruited, many leaving behind families and homes to join the cause. In a high-tech training facility in the Sahara, Flight Lieutenant Zora Osei sat in a simulator, her hands dancing across the controls of a virtual fighter. She had been flying for 12 hours straight, pushing herself to the limit. As the simulation ended, she removed her helmet, sweat beading on her dark skin. "Impressive flying, Lieutenant," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Captain Miguel Reyes, one of the supercarrier's future bridge officers. "But remember, in space, there's no up or down. You need to think in 3 dimensions at all times." Zara nodded, determination etched on her face. "I'll run it again, sir. I'll keep running it until I can fly these fighters in my sleep if that's what it takes." This scene was replicated in facilities around the world. Humanity was preparing for war, but it was more than that. They were preparing to prove their worth among the stars, to show that despite their relative youth as a spacefaring species, they were not to be underestimated. As the months ticked by, tensions rose. The Zarkonian fleet drew ever closer, and Earth's defenses were put to the test. Early warning systems were established throughout the solar system, and the first of the supercarriers, christened the TES Defiant, was ready for its maiden voyage. On the eve of the carrier's launch, General Hawthorne addressed the crew. "You carry with you the hopes and dreams of every human on Earth. But remember, you also carry our ingenuity, our adaptability, and our indomitable spirit. The Zarkonians think they're facing a primitive species ripe for conquest. Let's show them how wrong they are." As the Defiant rose from its hidden base, breaking through the clouds and into the starry expanse beyond, humanity held its collective breath. The first chapter in their greatest challenge was about to begin, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Little did they know, the true test of their resolve and the full extent of their innovation were yet to come. The stars awaited, and with them, a battle that would define the future of the human race. The human fleet unveiled. The TES Defiant glided silently through the inky void of space, its massive form casting a shadow across the cratered surface of the moon. On the bridge, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing Earth slowly shrinking behind them. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Lieutenant Commander Akira Tanaka, her second-in-command, responded promptly. "All systems are functioning at optimal levels, Captain. The modular reconfiguration systems are responsive, and our stealth capabilities are holding." Rodriguez nodded, a hint of pride in her eyes. The Defiant was more than just a warship. It was a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. Its modular design allowed for rapid reconfiguration, transforming from a carrier laden with fighters to a heavily armored battleship in a matter of minutes. "Very good," she said. "Prepare for rendezvous with the rest of the fleet at the Mars orbital station." As the Defiant approached the red planet, a sight unfolded that would have been unimaginable just a few short years ago. A fleet of 5 supercarriers, each as impressive as the Defiant, hung in Martian orbit. Smaller support ships darted between them, ferrying supplies and personnel. The comms crackled to life, and the gruff voice of Fleet Admiral Victor Petrov filled the bridge. "Captain Rodriguez, welcome to Operation Aegis. Prepare for docking and strategic briefing." Within the hour, the captains of all 6 supercarriers were gathered in the war room of the Mars orbital station. The atmosphere was tense, each officer acutely aware of the enormous responsibility they carried. Admiral Petrov, a bear of a man with a scared face that spoke of battles long past, activated a holographic display of the solar system. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2 weeks, the Zarkonian fleet will enter our system. Our mission is clear. We must stop them here, or Earth falls. He gestured to the display, highlighting the fleet's position. We'll make our stand at the Kuiper Belt. The debris and ice will provide cover and tactical advantages. Each carrier will be assigned a sector to defend. Captain Yuki Tanaka of the TES Intrepid raised a hand. Admiral, what do we know about Zarkonian capabilities? Petrov's expression darkened. Less than we'd like. Dr. Chen, if you would. Dr. Amelia Chen stepped forward, her usually calm demeanor strained. The Zarkonians possess energy weapons far beyond our current technology. Their ships are faster and more maneuverable than anything we've ever encountered. However, she paused, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. We believe our modular design and adaptive shields give us a unique advantage. The briefing continued, detailing battle plans, contingencies, and worst-case scenarios. As it concluded, Admiral Petrov looked each captain in the eye. You carry the fate of our species with you, but remember, you also carry the best of what humanity has to offer. Dismiss for you to inform your crews. We depart for the Kuiper Belt in 6 hours. Back aboard the Defiant, Captain Rodriguez addressed her crew. The mess hall was packed, every available screen showing her face to those who couldn't be present. Men and women of the Defiant, the time has come for us to prove our worth not just as a crew, but as a species. She paused, letting her words sink in. We face an enemy with superior technology and numbers. But we have something they don't. The ability to adapt, to think on our feet, to do the impossible when our backs are against the wall. Every one of you was chosen for your skills, your courage, and your ingenuity. Now is the time to show the universe what humans are made of. A cheer went up from the crew, a roar of defiance against the alien threat that sought to subjugate them. As it died down, Rodriguez continued, We depart for the Kuiper Belt in 6 hours. To your stations, and may fortune favor the bold. As the crew dispersed, a flurry of activity engulfed the ship. In the hangar bay, Flight Lieutenant Zora Osai ran her hand along the sleek hull of her fighter, a cutting-edge craft designed to operate in both space and atmosphere. Time to dance among the stars, she murmured, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through her. In engineering, Chief Engineer Dmitry Volkov oversaw the final checks on the ship's revolutionary power core. The matter-antimatter reactor hummed with barely contained energy, ready to propel the Defiant faster than any human vessel had gone before. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Tanaka coordinated with the other ships in the fleet, synchronizing systems and sharing last-minute intelligence. The mood was tense but focused, each crew member acutely aware of the monumental task that lay ahead. As the hour of departure approached, Captain Rodriguez stood before the main view screen, watching as the other carriers fell into formation. The sight was awe-inspiring. 6 massive vessels, each a city in space, moving in perfect harmony. Helm, set course for the Kuiper Belt, she ordered. Maximum speed. The fleet accelerated, pushing past the orbit of Jupiter, then Saturn. As they traversed the vast distances of the outer solar system, training continued unabated. Fighters launched and recovered, testing the limits of their capabilities in the frigid void. Engineers ran simulation after simulation, preparing for every conceivable scenario. In her quarters, Dr. Chen pored over the latest data from deep space probes. Her team had been working around the clock, trying to glean any additional information about the approaching Zarkonian fleet. A knock at her door startled her from her concentration. Enter, she called, rubbing her tired eyes. Captain Rodriguez stepped in, concern etched on her face. Any breakthroughs, Amelia? Chen shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. Nothing concrete, but there's something off about their approach vector. It's almost as if they're being overly cautious. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. You think they're afraid of us? Not afraid, Chen replied slowly, but perhaps uncertain. They've conquered countless worlds, Captain. Why would they send a warning first? Why give us time to prepare? The implications hung in the air between them. Could there be more to this conflict than a simple invasion? Before they could discuss further, the ship's AI interrupted. Captain, we're approaching the designated coordinates in the Kuiper Belt. Admiral Petrov is requesting all captains for a final briefing. Rodriguez nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities Chen had raised. On my way, she responded, then turned back to the scientist. Keep digging, Amelia. If there's anything to find, I know you'll uncover it. As she made her way to the briefing, Rodriguez couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The coming battle would test them in ways they couldn't imagine, but it might also reveal truths about their adversaries and themselves that would reshape their understanding of the cosmos. The fleet took up its positions among the icy bodies of the Kuiper Belt, a thin line of defense against the coming storm. On every ship, crews made final preparations, said quiet prayers, or simply stood in contemplation of the enormity of what they faced. In the darkness of space, the first signs of the Zarkonian fleet appeared, pinpricks of light that grew steadily brighter. The moment of truth had arrived, and humanity stood ready to fight for its very existence. Battle of Proxima Centauri. The void between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto erupted in a dazzling display of light as the Zarkonian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Their ships, sleek and predatory, numbered in the hundreds. At the center of their formation loomed a vessel that dwarfed even the human supercarriers, the Zarkonian flagship, a behemoth of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. Aboard the TES Defiant, alarms blared as sensors detected the massive energy spike of the alien fleet's arrival. Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. Battle stations, all hands, prepare for combat. Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to their posts. In the hangar bay, Flight Lieutenant Zora Osei climbed into her fighter, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Raven Squadron, this is lead. Prepare for launch on my mark. Admiral Petrov's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression grim but determined. All ships, execute Battle Plan Theta. May God be with us all. The human fleet sprang into action. The supercarriers began to reconfigure, panels sliding and locking into place as they transformed from carriers into battleships. Swarms of fighters poured from their hangars, forming a protective screen around the larger vessels. As the distance between the two fleets closed, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Then, without warning, the sky lit up with the fury of advanced weaponry. Lances of energy from Zarkonian ships sliced through space, met by the thunderous reply of human railguns and missile salvos. Captain Rodriguez gripped the arms of her command chair as the Defiant shuddered under the impact of enemy fire. Damage report. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka's fingers flew over his console. Shields holding at 82%, Captain. Modular armor in sections 5 through 8 has been compromised but is regenerating. Return fire. Target their lead destroyers, Rodriguez ordered. The Defiant's main guns roared to life, sending hypervelocity rounds hurtling towards the Zarkonian fleet. In space, Zora Osei led her squadron through a deadly dance among the stars. Human fighters, more agile than their alien counterparts, darted between larger ships, striking with precision before withdrawing. Raven 3, watch your 6. Zara called out, rolling her fighter to intercept an enemy craft bearing down on her wingman. The battle raged for hours, a titanic struggle that sprawled across millions of kilometers of space. The human fleet, despite being outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that seemed to catch the Zarkonians off guard. The supercarriers proved their worth, their modular designs allowing them to adapt to the flow of battle, shifting from offensive to defensive configurations as needed. Aboard the Zarkonian flagship, High Commander Zextor watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. Impossible, he snarled, his 4 eyes narrowing as another of his destroyers erupted in a ball of flame. These primitives should have been crushed by now. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Yarlith, approached cautiously. High Commander, Our initial assessments of human capabilities appear to have been flawed. Their technology, while crude, is remarkably effective. And their tactics are irrelevant. Zextor snapped. I will not be denied victory by a species that has barely left its cradle. Prepare the Worldbreaker. We'll show these humans the true might of the Empire. On the Defiant, Dr. Chen burst onto the bridge, her eyes wide with alarm. Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in the Zarkonian flagship. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Before Rodriguez could respond, a blinding beam of energy lanced out from the alien vessel, cutting through space like a scythe. It struck one of the human supercarriers, the TES Indomitable, dead center. For a moment, the Indomitable's shields flared brilliantly, then collapsed. The beam punched through the ship's armor like it was tissue paper, splitting the massive vessel in two. Horror and disbelief rippled through the human fleet as they watched one of their mightiest ships destroyed in seconds. Admiral Petrov's voice, tight with barely controlled anger, came over the comms. All ships, fall back to secondary positions. Initiate Protocol Omega. As the human fleet began to withdraw, regrouping around the dwarf planet Eris, Captain Rodriguez turned to her crew. We've lost a lot of good people today, but this fight is far from over. Dr. Chen, I need options. How do we counter that weapon? Chen's fingers flew over her console, analyzing the data from the Indomitable's destruction. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases, but there's something familiar about the radiation pattern. I need time to study this further. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Time is the one thing we're short on. Doctor, do what you can. As the remnants of the human fleet took up defensive positions around Eris, tension hung heavy in the air. The Zarkonians, seemingly content with their demonstration of power, held their position, no doubt preparing for a final push. In the Defiant's medical bay, overflowing with wounded from damaged ships, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Emeka Okafor worked tirelessly to save lives. As he moved from patient to patient, he couldn't help but overhear the worried whispers of the crew. The destruction of the Indomitable had shaken everyone's confidence. Back on the bridge, Rodriguez paced restlessly, her mind racing. They had held their own against the Zarkonians' conventional weapons, but this new threat changed everything. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Park, what's the status of our remaining ships? Park's response was grim. The Intrepid and Dauntless have suffered heavy damage. Valiant and Resolute are operational, but at reduced capacity. We're down to about 60% of our fighter strength. Rodriguez closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever. When she opened them, there was steel in her gaze. We need to buy time. Prepare a strike team. We're going to board that flagship. Gasps and murmurs of disbelief filled the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka stepped forward. Captain, with all due respect, that's suicide. Their defenses are focused outward. Rodriguez interrupted. They never expected us to bring the fight to them directly. It's a risk, yes, but right now, it's the best option we have. As plans for the daring assault were drawn up, Dr. Chen worked feverishly in her lab, poring over the data from the alien weapon. There was something nagging at the back of her mind, a connection she couldn't quite make. In the hangar bay, Flight Lieutenant Osai prepared for what might be her most dangerous mission yet. As she checked her gear, she caught sight of her reflection in her fighter's canopy. The face that looked back at her was tired but determined. For Earth, she whispered to herself. For all of us. As the human fleet regrouped and prepared for what might be their final stand, the Zarkonian ships loomed ominously in the distance. The next phase of the battle was about to begin, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The stars watched impassively as two civilizations clashed among them, one fighting for conquest, the other for survival. But in the crucible of this cosmic conflict, the true nature of both species would be revealed, and the course of galactic history would be forever altered. Battle of Proxima Centauri. The silence of space was shattered as the human strike team's stealth shuttle detached from the TES Defiant. Inside, Flight Lieutenant Zora Osei gripped the controls, her face a mask of concentration as she guided the craft towards the looming bulk of the Zarkonian flagship. "Remember," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm, "your primary objective is to disable that superweapon. Anything else is secondary." "Understood, Captain," replied Commander Marcus Chen, leader of the strike team and brother to Dr. Amelia Chen. He turned to his team, a mix of Marines and tech specialists. "Lock and load. People, we're about to make history." As the shuttle weaved its way through the debris-strewn battlefield, the rest of the human fleet sprang into action. The remaining supercarriers launched a coordinated attack, drawing the Zarkonians' attention away from the approaching strike team. Aboard the Defiant, Captain Rodriguez watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and anxiety. "Tactical status report." Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console. "The Valiant and Resolute are engaging the enemy's left flank. Intrepid and Dauntless are providing cover fire. Enemy ships are responding, but they seem confused by our attack pattern." Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. The modular nature of the human ships was proving to be a significant advantage. One moment they were carriers launching fighter swarms. The next, they were battleships unleashing devastating broadsides. In her lab, Dr. Amelia Chen worked feverishly, her eyes darting between multiple screens of data. Suddenly, she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's it," she exclaimed, quickly opening a channel to the bridge. "Captain, I've figured it out. The Zarkonian superweapon. It's not just a weapon. It's a key." On the bridge, Rodriguez furrowed her brow. "A key? To what, Doctor?" "To the fabric of space-time itself," Chen replied, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "They're not just trying to destroy us. They're trying to open a gateway, a wormhole of sorts. But the energy required is immense, and the calculations must be precise. One mistake, and they could tear apart the very space they're trying to traverse." The implications were staggering. Rodriguez's mind raced with the possibilities. "Can we use this information to our advantage?" "Possibly," Chen replied. "If we can disrupt their calculations or power flow at the right moment, we might be able to turn their weapon against them. But the timing would have to be perfect." Meanwhile, the strike team's shuttle had reached the Zarkonian flagship. Using the chaos of the battle as cover, they managed to slip through a gap in the enemy's energy shields, latching onto the hull near what appeared to be an airlock. "We're in position," Commander Chen reported, beginning boarding action. Inside the Zarkonian ship, alarms blared as the humans breached the hull. High Commander Zextor roared in fury. "Impossible. How dare these primitives set foot on the sacred soil of an Imperial vessel?" Sub-Commander Yarlith approached cautiously. "High Commander, perhaps we should delay the activation of the Worldbreaker. If the humans disrupt the process—" "Silence," Zextor snapped. "I will not be deterred by a handful of vermin. Begin the activation sequence. We'll crush these humans and open the gateway in one fell swoop." As Zarkonian troops rushed to repel the boarders, Commander Chen led his team deeper into the alien vessel. The interior was a maze of pulsing, organic-looking corridors and strange, shimmering force fields. "Stay sharp," Chen warned. "We're looking for their engineering section or command center. Anything that looks like it might control that superweapon." The team fought their way through waves of Zarkonian defenders, their advanced human weaponry proving surprisingly effective against the alien technology. But time was running out. Back in space, the battle had reached a fever pitch. Human fighters darted between capital ships, striking with precision before withdrawing. The supercarriers continued to shift and adapt, presenting an ever-changing target to the increasingly frustrated Zarkonians. Aboard the Defiant, Rodriguez received a priority transmission from Admiral Petrov. "Captain, our long-range sensors are picking up massive energy fluctuations from the Zarkonian flagship. Whatever they're planning, it's starting now." Rodriguez turned to her communications officer. "Patch me through to the strike team now." Commander Chen's voice came through, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. "Captain, we've reached what looks like their main engineering section. But this technology, it's like nothing we've ever seen." "Listen carefully," Rodriguez said, quickly relaying Dr. Chen's findings. "You need to disrupt their power flow or targeting systems. Anything to throw off their calculations." "Understood," Chen replied. "We'll do our best." Chen out. As the strike team fought to sabotage the alien superweapon, the space around the Zarkonian flagship began to warp and distort. A swirling vortex of energy started to form, growing larger by the second. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the tension on the Defiance Bridge. "Captain, they're opening the gateway. If we don't stop them now, they'll have a direct path to Earth." Rodriguez made a split-second decision. "All ships, concentrate fire on the Zarkonian flagship. We need to overload their systems." The human fleet responded immediately, unleashing everything they had at the massive alien vessel. Rail guns thundered, missile salvos streaked across space, and energy weapons lashed out in a desperate attempt to breach the enemy's defenses. Inside the Zarkonian ship, Commander Chen and his team had reached the heart of the alien engine room. Strange, pulsing crystals surrounded a central pillar of pure energy. "This has to be it," Chen said, setting explosive charges. "Plant the charges and prepare to detonate on my mark." But before they could act, a deep, resonating hum filled the air. The pillar of energy began to pulse more rapidly, and the very fabric of space-time seemed to bend around them. "It's now or never," Chen yelled. "Detonate." The explosions ripped through the alien engine room just as the human fleet's barrage reached its peak. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash that seemed to dim the very stars, the Zarkonian flagship imploded. The swirling vortex of energy, instead of forming a stable gateway, collapsed in on itself. A shockwave of unimaginable power radiated outward, catching both human and Zarkonian ships in its wake. On the Defiance Bridge, alarms blared as the ship was tossed like a leaf in a storm. "All hands, brace for impact," Rodriguez shouted, gripping her command chair. For several heart-stopping moments, chaos reigned. Then, slowly, the turbulence subsided. As systems came back online, a stunned silence fell over the bridge. Where the Zarkonian flagship had been, there was now only a slowly dissipating cloud of debris. The remaining alien ships, their command structure shattered, began to retreat in disarray. "Status report," Rodriguez demanded, her voice hoarse. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka, sporting a gash on his forehead, responded. "Heavy damage across the fleet, Captain. But we're still here. The Zarkonian forces are in full retreat." A cheer went up across the bridge, quickly spreading throughout the ship and the rest of the fleet. Against all odds, humanity had prevailed. As the celebration continued, Rodriguez couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. Any word from the strike team? For a long moment, there was no response. Then, a crackle of static, and a weak voice came through. "Defiant, this is Commander Chen. Mission accomplished. Requesting immediate extraction. It's something else out here, Captain. You're going to want to see this." As rescue shuttles were dispatched to retrieve the surviving members of the strike team, the human fleet began to regroup and assess the damage. They had won the battle, but Rodriguez knew that this was only the beginning. The Zarkonians had been driven back, but for how long? And what secrets lay hidden in the strange realm glimpsed through their failed gateway? As she looked out at the starfield, now littered with the debris of battle, Captain Elena Rodriguez knew that humanity's greatest adventure, and perhaps its greatest challenge, was just beginning. The Battle of Proxima Centauri would go down in history as the day humanity proved its worth among the stars. But as the adrenaline of victory began to fade, questions loomed. What were the Zarkonians really after? And how would this victory change humanity's place in the cosmos? As the fleet began the long journey home, carrying with them the scars of battle and the seeds of new discoveries, one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same again. Alien counterattack and human ingenuity. The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with both elation at their victory and apprehension about what might come next. As the battered human fleet limped home, repair crews worked around the clock to patch up the damage from the Battle of Proxima Centauri. Aboard the TES Defiant, Captain Elena Rodriguez sat in her ready room, poring over reports from across the fleet. The door chimed, and she looked up to see Dr. Amelia Chen enter, her face a mixture of excitement and concern. "Captain, I've been analyzing the data we collected from the Zarkonian flagship before it was destroyed," Chen said, her words tumbling out in a rush. It's revolutionary. Their world-breaker wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to unlocking the very fabric of space-time. Rodriguez leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "Explain." Chen activated a holographic display, showing a complex series of equations and swirling energy patterns. The Zarkonians were attempting to create a stable wormhole, a gateway that could span vast distances of space instantly. But the energy requirements were enormous, and the calculations needed to be incredibly precise. "And we disrupted those calculations," Rodriguez mused. "Exactly," Chen nodded. "But here's the thing, Captain. I believe we can replicate this technology, given time. And if we can, the possibilities are endless." Before Rodriguez could respond, the ship's AI interrupted. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Petrov." The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Captain Rodriguez, I hope your fleet is ready for another fight. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Zarkonian fleet entering the solar system. They'll reach Earth in less than 48 hours. Rodriguez felt her heart sink. "Sir, we're still repairing damage from Proxima Centauri. We're in no shape for another major engagement." Petrov's jaw tightened. "I know, Captain. But we have no choice. This is it. Either we stop them here, or Earth falls. I'm ordering all available ships to rendezvous at Mars. We'll make our stand there." As the transmission ended, Rodriguez turned to Chen. "Doctor, it looks like we're going to need a miracle. How quickly can you weaponize that Zarkonian technology?" Chen's eyes widened. "Weaponize? Captain, we barely understand it. To try and—" "We don't have a choice," Rodriguez interrupted. "Work with engineering. Use whatever resources you need. We need an edge, and we need it now." As Chen hurried off, Rodriguez addressed the ship. "All hands, this is the captain. Set course for Mars, maximum speed. And prepare for battle. The fate of Earth depends on us." The next 48 hours were a flurry of activity across the human fleet. Ships were patched up as best they could be, weapons were reloaded, and crews prepared for what might be their final battle. On Mars, a hastily assembled war council convened. Admiral Petrov stood before a holographic display of the solar system, the incoming Zarkonian fleet represented by an ominous red mass. "Ladies and gentlemen, I won't sugarcoat this. We're outnumbered and outgunned. But we have something they don't, the home field advantage. We know this system, every asteroid, every moon, every gravitational eddy. And we're going to use that knowledge." He outlined a daring plan. The human fleet would use the complex gravitational dynamics of the Martian moons Phobos and Deimos to perform slingshot maneuvers, allowing them to strike at the Zarkonian fleet from unexpected angles. Meanwhile, a small team led by Dr. Chen would attempt to use the partially understood Zarkonian technology to disrupt the alien fleet's communications navigation. As the council dispersed, Captain Rodriguez approached Admiral Petrov. "Sir, with all due respect, this plan is incredibly risky. If Dr. Chen's team fails—" Petrov's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of determination and resignation. "Then we die fighting, Captain, but we will not go gently into that good night." The hours ticked by. tension mounting as the Zarkonian fleet drew ever closer. Aboard the Defiant, Dr. Chen and her team worked feverishly, attempting to merge human and Zarkonian technology in ways never before imagined. In the hangar bay, Flight Lieutenant Zara Osai ran her hand along the hull of her fighter, whispering a quiet prayer. Around her, other pilots did the same, each coming to terms with the enormity of what they faced. As the enemy fleet entered the orbit of Mars, Admiral Petrov's voice rang out across all human ships. "This is it, people. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every man, woman, and child on Earth, for every dream unrealized, every future unwritten. We are humanity's last line of defense. Make it count." With that, the battle was joined. Human ships darted between the Martian moons, using their gravity to slingshot into attack runs against the much larger Zarkonian fleet. Fighters weaved through the chaos, striking at vital systems before retreating to the safety of the moon's shadows. Aboard the Defiant, Rodriguez barked orders as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Evasive maneuvers. Bring us around for another pass on their flagship. In the ship's lab, Dr. Chen and her team worked desperately to fine-tune their jury-rigged device. "We're almost there," she muttered, making one final adjustment. Now, a pulse of energy radiated out from the Defiant, washing over the battlefield. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted among the Zarkonian ships. Their formation broke apart, ships colliding with one another as their navigation systems went haywire. It worked. Chen's jubilant voice rang out over the comms. "Their systems are scrambled. They're flying blind." Rodriguez allowed herself a grim smile. "All ships, this is our chance. Concentrate fire on their capital ships. Don't let up." The tide of battle began to turn. Human ships, though fewer in number, struck with precision and coordination. Zarkonian vessels, their systems in disarray, fell one by one to the onslaught. But the aliens were not defeated yet. Their flagship, a behemoth that dwarfed even the largest human vessels, pushed through the chaos. Its main weapon, a scaled-down version of the Worldbreaker, began to pulse with ominous energy. "They're powering up their main gun," Tactical Officer Park shouted. "If that thing fires, it'll tear right through our fleet." Rodriguez made a split-second decision. All power to engines and forward shields. Helm set a collision course for their flagship. "Captain," the helmsman's voice was filled with disbelief. "You heard me, Lieutenant. If that weapon fires, we're all dead anyway. At least this way, we take them with us." As the Defiant surged forward, hurtling towards the massive Zarkonian ship, Rodriguez opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, fall back to secondary positions. It's been an honor serving with you all." The Zarkonian weapon reached full power, a blinding light building at its tip. The Defiant closed the distance, its shields straining under the barrage of enemy fire. Just as collision seemed imminent, Dr. Chen's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, wait. I think I can reverse the polarity of their weapon. If I'm right, it'll create a feedback loop that'll destroy their ship from the inside." "Do it," Rodriguez ordered, her knuckles white, as she gripped her command chair. Chen worked feverishly, interfacing their cobbled-together device with the ship's main systems. As the Zarkonian weapon prepared to fire, she activated the device. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, a surge of energy coursed back through the alien weapon. The Zarkonian flagship shuddered, arcs of wild energy playing across its hull. With a silent flash that seemed to dim the stars themselves, the massive ship exploded. The shockwave buffeted the Defiant, sending it tumbling through space. As systems came back online and the view screens cleared, a cheer went up across the bridge. The Zarkonian fleet, leaderless and in disarray, was retreating. Admiral Petrov's voice, filled with awe and relief, came over the comms. "You did it, Defiant. You magnificent bastards, you actually did it." As the realization of their victory sank in, Rodriguez slumped in her chair, the adrenaline of battle giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had prevailed. But as she looked out at the debris-strewn battlefield, at the battered but unbowed ships of the human fleet, she knew that this was only the beginning. The Zarkonians would be back, and Earth would need to be ready. The battle for humanity's future among the stars had only just begun, but they had proven that they were worthy of that future. Whatever came next, they would face it together, with the ingenuity and courage that had saved them this day. As the fleet began the journey back to Earth, carrying with them the scars of battle and the seeds of new technologies, one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same again. Negotiations and unexpected alliances. In the months following the Battle of Mars, Earth underwent a transformation unlike any in its history. The threat of alien invasion had united humanity in ways previously thought impossible. Old rivalries were set aside as nations pooled their resources and expertise towards a common goal, preparing for the next Zarkonian attack. Captain Elena Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, stood before a window in the newly constructed Terran Defense Headquarters, watching as ships of all sizes darted between orbital construction platforms. The skyline of Earth's first true space city was taking shape before her eyes. Impressive, isn't it? The voice of Dr. Amelia Chen pulled Rodriguez from her reverie. 6 months ago, this was all just theory and dreams. Now, look at us. Rodriguez nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. We've come a long way. But will it be enough? Before Chen could respond, an aide rushed in. Admiral, we're picking up an incoming transmission. It's from the Zarkonians. Rodriguez's eyes widened. Put it through to the main briefing room. And get me the Security Council. Now. Minutes later, the leaders of Earth's United Defense Force gathered around a holographic projector. With a nod from Rodriguez, the transmission began. A Zarkonian face appeared, its 4 eyes blinking in sequence. The universal translator kicked in, rendering its clicks and whistles into English. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Grand Arbiter Zexloth of the Zarkonian Imperium. We request a parley. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. Rodriguez stepped forward. This is Admiral Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force. We're listening. Zexloth's expression was unreadable to human eyes. Your species has proven more resilient than anticipated. A High Council wishes to avoid further unnecessary bloodshed. We propose a meeting on neutral ground to discuss terms. As the transmission ended, the room erupted into debate. Some argued it was a trap. Others saw it as an opportunity for peace. Rodriguez raised her hand for silence. We can't ignore this opportunity, she said firmly. But we also can't walk in unprepared. Dr. Chen, how close are we to replicating the Zarkonian wormhole technology? Chen straightened. We've made significant progress, Admiral. We can generate small, stable wormholes in controlled conditions. Nothing large enough for a ship yet, but enough to give us an ace up our sleeve. Rodriguez finished. She turned to the assembled leaders. I propose we accept their offer, but on our terms. We choose the location. We set the security protocols. After hours of debate and planning, a response was sent to the Zarkonians. The neutral ground would be Ceres, the dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. Both sides would be allowed a small fleet for protection, but the actual negotiations would take place with limited personnel. 2 weeks later, Rodriguez found herself aboard the TES, defiant once more, leading a small flotilla towards the rendezvous point. As Ceres grew larger in the view screen, tension mounted on the bridge. Zarkonian ships detected, announced the tactical officer. 5 vessels, matching our numbers exactly. Rodriguez nodded, just as agreed. Helm, take us in. The negotiations were to take place in a hastily constructed facility on Ceres' surface. As Rodriguez stepped out of the shuttle, the low gravity making her movements feel surreal, she caught her first in-person glimpse of a Zarkonian. Grand Arbiter Zexloth was tall, easily 7 feet, with iridescent scales and 4 articulated arms. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he regarded the human delegation. "Admiral Rodriguez," he said, his translator rendering his speech into slightly accented English, "your reputation precedes you." "As does yours, Grand Arbiter," Rodriguez replied coolly. "Shall we begin?" The negotiations were tense, filled with long silences and heated debates. The Zarkonians, it turned out, were not the monolithic conquerors humans had assumed. Their empire was vast, but fracturing, with different factions vying for power. "The attack on your world was not sanctioned by the full council," Zexloth admitted on the 3rd day of talks. "It was the action of an ambitious faction, one that has since been dealt with." Rodriguez leaned forward. "And yet you continued to press the attack, even after your initial defeat." Zexloth's scales rippled, a sign Rodriguez had come to recognize as discomfort. "Politics," he said simply. "To admit defeat to a species as young as yours, it would have meant civil war." As the talks progressed, a clearer picture began to emerge. The Zarkonian Empire was old, spanning thousands of years and countless star systems, but it was stagnating, torn between traditionalists who sought to maintain their superiority through force, and progressives who saw the need for change and new alliances. On the 5th day, as both sides were nearing exhaustion, Dr. Chen burst into the conference room, her eyes wide with excitement. "Admiral, Grand Arbiter, I apologize for the interruption, but we've done it. We've successfully generated a stable, ship-sized wormhole." The room fell silent. Zexloth's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "Impossible," he whispered. "Your species is too young, too resourceful." Rodriguez finished for him. "Grand Arbiter, I think it's time we laid all our cards on the table. We don't want war. But we will not be subjugated either. We're offering an alliance, not submission." Zexloth was quiet for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. It was an odd, whistling sound, but unmistakably one of genuine amusement. "Oh, Admiral," he said, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his voice, "I think you may have just saved both our civilizations." In the days that followed, a new plan took shape. The Zarkonian Empire would recognize Earth and its colonies as a sovereign ally power. In exchange, humans would share their innovations, their fresh perspective, as Zexloth put it, to help reinvigorate the empire. "There are threats out there," Zexloth explained, "ancient and terrible things that even we fear. With your adaptability and our experience, we might stand a chance against them." As the final documents were signed, Rodriguez felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They had done it. Against all odds, they had secured not just peace, but a future among the stars. Back on the Defiant, preparing for the journey home, Rodriguez found Dr. Chen in the observation lounge, staring out at the starfield. "Penny for your thoughts, Doctor," Rodriguez asked, joining her at the window. Chen smiled. "I was just thinking about how far we've come. A year ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. Now look at us, allies with an interstellar empire on the brink of faster-than-light travel." Rodriguez nodded. "It's a big universe out there, Amelia, bigger than we ever imagined. And now we get to explore it." As the Defiant broke orbit, setting course for Earth, both women felt a sense of anticipation. The future was uncertain, filled with both promise and peril, but humanity had proven itself. Whatever came next, they would face it together, with allies old and new. The stars beckoned, and humanity was ready to answer the call. As the ship accelerated, the first human-generated wormhole blossomed before them, a swirling vortex of possibility. With a shared glance of excitement and determination, Rodriguez gave the order. "Take us through." The Defiant surged forward, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire species. As they crossed the threshold into a new era of human history, one thing was certain: the greatest adventure was just beginning.